We are live. The window capture. Why is our... Look, we're already plagued with Discord issue. Where is our Discord window? Welcome everybody to Saving the World, or Saving the Universe with GPT. Oh, we're in study room 2. That's why. Okay, that makes sense. All right.
Let's go to podcast.
No, we're good.
Then.
We're good. We're good.
Oh,
I'd have to
okay,
change the screen again. Yeah. So we should be live on YouTube.
I'm gonna check that right now.
Yes, it is. We are live. So welcome everybody.
We are live.
Saving the Earth with ChatGPT. So what does that even mean? What does that mean to you, Mike? Saving the Earth.
What is?
How would we
saving
even
the
start?
Earth?
I think we'd have to start by identifying the problems that Earth faces right now, wouldn't we?
Yeah. Well, for starters,
What are Earth's major problems? We're going to start with that right now. Major issues that put the planet at jeopardy.
So there's climate change, there's deforestation, there's pollution, biodiversity loss, ocean acidification, resource depletion, waste management, overpopulation, desertification, freshwater scarcity. Deforestation, yes. But there's also desertification, which is the degradation of land in arid and semi-arid areas due to climate change and unsustainable agricultural practices, leading to the loss of productive land and worsening food security. And then there's also freshwater scarcity. Freshwater is becoming more and more scarce. Let's see.
Climate change. ChatGPT says climate change is the most influential issue Earth is facing at the moment. And it exacerbates many other environmental problems, including biodiversity loss, ocean acidification, and extreme weather events. The impacts of climate change are widespread, affecting ecosystems, human health, food security, and economic stability. If not addressed urgently, the consequences will become increasingly severe and harder to reverse, threatening the long-term habitability of the planet. Reducing greenhouse gas emissions, transitioning to renewable energy sources, and implementing strategies to adapt the changing climate are critical steps needed to mitigate this crisis. Yes, well, we've already explored yesterday one way that we can tackle the greenhouse issue.
And refresh me on what we talked about there.
Oh, we were talking about just taking some of these greenhouse gases from the atmosphere and shipping them off to Mars, essentially. Like taking I guess huge Pokemon balls and catching them all and then throwing them to Mars. In a very simplistic term. I'm saying, I'm not saying that the canisters or whatever will be Pokemon ball shaped, but it's like catching a Pokemon.
Well, I think a lot of a lot of it has to do with pollution and climate change. Um, we one of the things that bothers me about even the way that we eat as humans, we use a lot of meat, and there's nothing wrong with sustaining our lives. Every life is precious, right down to every cow that we eat. But I digress. Meat still is a major contributor to um, our pollution problem, and it is actually the biggest contributor, aside from emissions from cars, everything else that could cause pollution, even factories. You know, uh, the beef industry and the meat industry, but particularly the beef industry, causes a lot more, the most CO2 emissions out of everything else.
I wonder
And
though.
huh?
I wonder though if is the beef industry really that impactful on our climate? Like how? I don't understand really. You'd think the
You
automotive
wonder if
industry.
what?
You'd think the automotive industry and the
Did we
um,
lose you, Knuckles?
are you not able to hear me? You can't hear me? Hold on just one moment. Maybe it's my. Um, all right, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I just had to go and re up this. So, yeah, I'm just wondering if if the cattle industry really is that much effective on our climate change. You would think that the automotive industry and the oil industry, um, would be more detrimental to our climate.
Well, the beef industry is a significant contributor to greenhouse gas emissions, particularly carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide, which are all potent greenhouse gases.
Are they saying this
Um,
because of the amount of animals that are alive?
well, let me dive into this a little bit.
Because if that's the
Um, cattle
case, okay, sorry.
cattle produce methane during digestion through a process called enteric fermentation. Methane is a more potent greenhouse gas than CO2, with a much higher global warming potential over a short period. The beef industry requires vast amounts of land for grazing cattle and growing feed crops. Deforestation, particularly in regions like the Amazon rainforest, is often driven by the need to clear land for cattle ranching. This leads to a significant loss of carbon sinks and increased CO2 emissions. Also, the beef industry is water intensive. Large quantities of water are required to grow feed crops, hydrate the cattle, and process the meat. Water scarcity is a growing concern, particularly in regions where water resources are already stressed. Growing feed for cattle often involves intensive agricultural practices that contribute to CO2 emissions. The use of fertilizers and pesticides, as well as the energy required for planting, harvesting, and transporting feed, all add to the industry's carbon footprint. The transportation of cattle and beef products, as well as the energy used in processing facilities, contributes further to CO2 emissions. Manure from cattle releases methane and nitrous oxide when not managed properly. Large scale cattle operations often struggle with the sustainable management of manure, leading to further environmental impacts. And last, the expansion of cattle ranching into forested areas leads to deforestation, which not only releases stored carbon, but also releases stored carbon, but also releases the loss of biodiversity and disruption in ecosystems.
Okay.
And
So, okay, sorry.
so the big thing here is that the cattle industry, cattle ranching, you know, it's all it leaves the biggest carbon footprint on the earth, other than all of the other ways that we do CO2 emissions combined. It's astronomical.
So, I'm just wondering, though, if we weren't in control of the breeding of these animals and if they were free and wild, I feel like there would be more because it's unregulated, because they would be just free to roam wherever they want and they could be free to populate however they want. They'd breed however they want, right? So
Right.
so there's a potential that maybe there would be more cattle if we didn't eat cattle, right? Which would produce more of these methane gases. Another topic that was hit on was the manufacturing of the feed. So, if we didn't eat, let's say we didn't eat meat and everybody all of a sudden became vegetarian and we all needed to eat vegetables, we would need to clear more paths for growing food for everybody to eat. So there would be more deforestation, essentially, because everybody all of a sudden needs to eat vegetables. And there's not enough land to produce the amount of vegetables, so they'd have to make more land. And then they'd have to transport that product like the same as they do for the feed for the animals. So we're not eliminating the transportation of the feed, and there would be maybe an increase in transportation for all of these vegetables and grown products because of the increase in demand worldwide, globally, if everybody became vegetarian. So it would almost increase that level.
Well, there's also ways to use less land and grow more food at the same time. There is a method, one of the most well-known methods used by the Native Americans and indigenous communities. It's called the Three Sisters farming. This technique involves growing three complementary crops together: corn, beans, and squash. And corn provides a natural structure for the beans to climb, eliminating the need for poles. Beans fix nitrogen into the soil, which benefits all three plants by improving soil fertility. And squash grows low to the ground, providing shade that helps retain soil moisture and suppress weeds. Um, so there's companion planting beyond the Three Sisters, uh, where various plants were grown together to support each other, improve soil health, and reduce the need for artificial inputs.
What is Comcast,
There's
Daniel? says Comcast. Comcast, I
Well,
believe, is a how would you put it? They're well, let's just ask ChatGPT. What is Comcast? Like, we'll do that for our viewer. Welcome, by the way. So
welcome.
let's ask what Comcast is.
As I was saying, though, there's also terrace farming, where in areas with hilly or mountainous terrain, indigenous people created terraces to prevent soil erosion and manage water more efficiently. There's agroforestry. Some groups practiced agroforestry, integrating crops and trees to create a more diverse and resilient agricultural system. And they used irrigation and water management systems that are sophisticated, like the HOCOM or the HOHOCOM, I think it's pronounced, spelled HOHOKAM, in the southwestern United States, who built extensive canal networks to irrigate their crops in arid environments.
But
And
I really don't see how, right now I guess it's more about how we could farm better and not about the cattle.
um, so basically, we could use less farmland to grow the types of feed that we use to feed our cattle, for sure. We could use less land for more if we practiced some of these things. Because, I mean, everywhere I go in the United States, at least, where I've seen rows and rows and rows of corn, I never see any beans or squash or any other kinds of plants that help retain the soil for excuse me, that help retain the nutrients in the soil. And uh it's pretty innovative, and yet it's really something that we should have been practicing long ago. Like there was a discussion I was having about traditions, and how sometimes excuse me, I'm getting calls. um but I really think that the cattle issue is a big issue. One of the ways we could tackle that issue is the way that we farm our crops. Definitely, especially when coming to like the feed. But as far as that goes, um, the cattle industry does pose a huge issue. Um,
I Like I said, I really don't think it's as much as people think. Like I'll play on the other side of this for a minute. Like I don't eat very much meat, but I really just feel like these cows who we don't have control of, that we don't eat anymore, who are running wild because nobody's farming them, raising them, have farms. They're all running wild. They're gonna multiply however they want. They're gonna There's gonna be a lot more cows. They're gonna graze a lot more. They're gonna be more spread out. Um, and I really feel like that is gonna cause more methane gas for one. Plus, they're probably gonna start getting into um, more sensitive areas to graze, which could cause some issues for the environment as well. Um, it's sort of like
Well, I'm looking at a graph here actually. It was created by a person named Wendy David, and um, when it comes to this graph here, I'm gonna send it to you real quick. On as far as the beef research is concerned, um, so cow calf, 51.3 million animals, which includes beef cattle, cows, replacements, heifers, calves, and bulls. Uh, the percent of carbon footprint to farm gate is 70%.
okay.
And
Well,
then
I'll give you.
stalker and backgrounding, which is 11.5 million animals, which includes steers and heifers bound to a feed for a feedlot, is only 13%, and feedlot and finishing, which includes 13.1 million animals, mostly steers, but also heifers eating high grain diets, at 17% uh,
I've got some
for the
statistics
carbon
for you.
footprint to farm gate.
I've got some statistics myself for you. Are you familiar with India's practice on cows?
To my knowledge, I think cows are considered holy in
Right.
India.
So they don't use them for food, and they let them run free. So right now, the United States, the cattle population in the United States, which includes both beef and dairy cows, is estimated to be around 94 million, whereas India has the highest, they're the largest capital population in the world. The number of cows and other cattle in India is estimated to be over 300 million. It includes a mix of cows, bulls, buffaloes, and other cattle. So essentially, like I was saying, if we let loose these cows and don't eat them or use them for food, they're going to multiply greatly. The carbon footprint of these 300 million plus uh, cows in India are so much greater than the ones in the United States, even though people like to think that United States um, has more, you know, we eat a lot of beef, right? Oh, the beef eating industry is causing a huge impact on the environment. Well, to be fair, I really would argue that India itself is 75% more at fault for this cattle producing global warming issue than the United States or anybody who eats meat, really, because of what's happening in in India, right? Like this, it's not even a hundred million in America, where it's over 300 million in India.
Yeah.
Right? So that carbon
Um,
footprint of the cows is so much more than in the United States. And they don't eat their cows over there, but we do. So essentially, by eating cows, it's reducing the carbon footprint that the cows would produce. So we're saving, not creating.
um, yeah. Let's see here. So I'm trying to think here. As far as beef goes, um, what is the beef for
Where's the
beef?
beef? Where's the
Where's the
beef?
beef? Um, there's also other issues. Um, the atmosphere is getting hotter here on Earth, and it's becoming too hot. Uh,
Hello,
the
Naomi.
Bill Nye said it himself. You know, he Bill Nye basically said that the world is on fucking fire. And he's correct on the notion that, like, not literally, but quite literally, the world is on fire. And the issue that I would like to tackle here is that how are we going to cool down the atmosphere in order to help not just sustaining life, but also to correct the weather patterns and the environment of different,
I I'd like
life
to
forms.
think I'd like to think that we should focus on the macro of the issue instead of the micro of the issue, because the micro of the issue that a lot of people like to say is, not eating a meat is going to help save the world. Well, we can look at some
Right.
numbers. I don't think that. I think it's kind of keeping it in check in that area. To be fair, um, so the macro would be, well, let's look at the corporations instead of the little farmers who are supplying people with food, who are or helping people. Let's look at
Well,
the
yeah,
big
the farmers are
corporations.
very crucial,
Let's
very,
look at the
very
big
crucial in our
corporations
society.
who have set up all of these um, plants, like facilities for fuel and manufacturing and energy creation. Um, I think the outputs of all of these factories are playing a much more crucial role than a few million cows farting. You know,
Yeah.
right? So if we
Um,
really want to save the world, let's start with the big problems, the ones that nobody wants to talk about. We should find out exactly the carbon footprint of, say, the largest fuel manufacturer in the world and the largest car manufacturer in the world. Let's see which country, in fact, has the largest carbon footprint. To, um, Jeff Bezos, for one, his carbon footprint is more than 10 people's, and he's just one guy. So, there's some excess there. Look at all these jets, the private jets, the yachts, the manufacturing of automobiles in excess, and you see all of these car dealerships with so many cars sitting in the lots, and nobody's driving them, and nobody will drive them. They're just going to get sent back. There's more cars per person than there are people in this world. Ideally, to think about it, I think that's really true. So, changing the way big business does business and manufactures their business in excess, in hopes that in hopes that someone's gonna buy something. You know, um,
well, yeah.
all this energy creation. Oh, hold on. Daniel's really interested to know when all this stuff is, what all this stuff is. So we'll have to appease Daniel here. So Daniel wants to know, what was the date the text for Magic Treehouse #1 Dinosaurs Before Dark was completed? That's his question. So the exact date when the text for Magic Treehouse #1 Dinosaurs Before Dark was completed is not publicly documented. However, the manuscript would have been finished several months, if not a year or more, before the book's publication date on July 28, 1992. The completion of the text would have been followed by editing, revisions, and production process, including the creation of illustrations and cover art, leading up to the final publication. Hopefully that gives you the answer you were looking for, Daniel. I mean, maybe that information will help save Earth someday. We don't know. But
So,
he's really interested in the magic treehouse.
yeah.
Yeah, he's been asking a lot. Naomi was in the stream. She put a smiley face and I think a Jamaican flag and a seashell.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome that we got commenters and we got Naomi on the stream, and
Daniel wants to
that's
know
awesome.
how long the writing took, I guess. Well, let's just answer that for
Yeah,
you.
and thank
So,
you, Daniel.
what was the time frame for writing Magic Treehouse number 1 Dinosaurs Before Dark? Well, the specific time frame during which Mary Pope Osborne wrote Magic Treehouse number 1 Dinosaurs Before Dark is not widely documented. However, the book was published on July 28th, 1992, and the writing process likely began at least a year or more before that date. For most authors, the process of writing, editing, and preparing a book for publication typically spans several months to a year, depending on factors like the complexity of the story, the author's schedule, and the editing process. Given the book's relatively short length and the start of a new series, Osborne may have completed the manuscript within several months, followed by a period of editing and production. Healthy
Huh.
information to know if you're interested in writing a book.
Yeah.
Daniel Gallinah.
So,
So essentially,
we
we'd have to change the way the people who run the world operate. And they're just passing the buck off on to the little person.
so a lot of now we're delving into like political issues, right?
Well, I would argue that to
We're
save the Earth, we would need to rein in a lot of politics, yeah.
yes. And this will be a touchy and sketchy subject for us to delve into, but it's a necessary one. Um, I believe that there is a 1%, maybe less than 1% of the population of human beings that have so much money that they could never possibly spend it within their own lifetimes. I
I mean,
mean,
to argue that fact,
they
I'm sure if they just gave it all away. You know what I mean?
but they won't. They won't do that. It's not that they refuse to do it, it's that they won't. They will not. And maybe this is the result of um you know uh maybe the nuclear family, or maybe it's the result of you know a few different things. um I actually had an interesting conversation with ChatGPT about stuff like this. um I wanted to wanted to see if I can find that for you. Um, let's see here.
And to answer Daniel's newest question, The Magic Treehouse number 2, The Night at Dawn, was published on February 16th, 1993.
Let's see. So, oh yeah, here's a conversation I had about intercropping. That's cool. Um, I'm
So
sorry this is
Daniel,
taking so long.
so Daniel asks, what was the writing process for Magic Treehouse number 1, Dinosaurs Before Dark? Well, Mary Pope Osborne's writing process for Magic Treehouse number 1, Dinosaurs Before Dark involved several key steps. Idea generation. So Osborne developed the concept for the Magic Treehouse series, which blends adventure with educational content. The idea of a magical treehouse that allows children to travel through time and explore different periods of history was central to the series. Research. For Dinosaurs Before Dark, Osborne conducted research to accurately depict dinosaurs and the prehistoric world. This involved reading books, visiting museums, and consulting with experts to ensure that the details in the story were both engaging and educational. Writing the manuscript, that's her third step. Osborne wrote the manuscript, focusing on creating a compelling and age appropriate story. The narrative follows siblings Jack and Annie as they travel back to the age of dinosaurs and embark on an adventure. Revisions and editing was the fourth step. After completing the manuscript, Osborne worked with editors to revise and refine the text. This process included improving the story's flow, ensuring clarity, and making sure the content was suitable for the target age group. Number 5, illustrations and production. Once the text was finalized, Sal Murdoka created the interior illustrations, which were integral to bringing the story to life for young readers. The illustrations and text were combined during the production process. The sixth step was publication. The final manuscript, illustrations, and cover design were prepared for publication. Dinosaurs Before Dark was released on July 28, 1992, making the debut of the Magic Treehouse series. Osborne's approach involved a combination of creativity, research, and collaboration with editors and illustrators to create an engaging and educational book for children. ChatGPT knows it all, my friend. Well, maybe. Maybe. Solid questions today, Daniel.
Trying to find it still.
Yeah,
I have
we.
so many conversations.
That's okay, because Daniel's given us another question. So he said, what was the ownership name for WTXF TV Philadelphia in 1993? In 1993, WTXF TV in Philadelphia was owned by Fox Television Stations Incorporated. The station, which is now known as Fox 29, became a Fox affiliate when Fox purchased it in 1986. Did not know that.
I found it. I think I found it. Um, so it started off with, is there an invention concept for something that goes into the Earth's atmosphere and forms a layer that blocks some of the sun's rays in an effort to cool the Earth? ChatGPT responded, yes, there is a concept known as solar and geoengineering, is specifically stratospheric aerosol injection, also known as SAI, which aims to cool the Earth by reflecting a small percentage of the sun's rays back into space. The idea involves injecting reflective particles, such as sulfur dioxide, into the stratosphere to create a layer that mimics the cooling effect of volcanic eruptions. When large volcanoes erupt, they release aerosols into the atmosphere that reflect sunlight, temporarily lowering global temperatures. SAI is a highly debated topic because while it could theoretically reduce global temperatures, it could also carry risks and uncertainties. Potential side effects include changes to weather patterns, disruptions to agriculture, and impacts on the ozone layer. Moreover, it does not address the root cause of climate change, greenhouse gas emissions, and may have geopolitical implications. So then I asked, is there a way to repair the ozone layer artificially? And it said there are several proposed methods for repairing the ozone layer artificially, though none are currently in widespread use. Most efforts have focused on reducing the production and use of ozone-depleting substances, which has allowed the ozone layer to heal naturally over time. However, artificial repair methods have been explored, including ozone injection, which some scientists have suggested directly injecting ozone into the stratosphere to replenish the ozone layer. However, this is a complex and energy-intensive process, and as ozone is highly reactive and difficult to produce in large quantities. Transporting it to the stratosphere also presents significant logistical challenges. Injecting oxygen into the stratosphere. Another concept is to release oxygen, O2, into the stratosphere, where ultraviolet radiation would naturally convert it into ozone, O3. However, the idea faces similar logistical challenges, and the scale required to make a meaningful impact is enormous. Then 3, catalytic converters for ozone-depleting substances.
That's why
There have been
everybody's catalytic
proposals.
converters are getting stolen.
There have been proposals to develop technologies that would break down ozone-depleting chemicals, such as CFCs and halons, in the atmosphere. This would reduce the amount of harmful substances that reach the stratosphere, allowing the ozone layer to recover more quickly. 4, stratospheric aerosol injection with ozone-enhancing particles. Some variations of solar geoengineering, like stratospheric aerosol injection, have explored using particles that not only reflect sunlight but also have a neutral or positive impact on ozone levels. For example, calcium carbonate particles have been considered as an alternative to sulfur dioxide, which depletes ozone. 5, phasing out ozone-depleting substances. Although not an artificial repair method, the most effective approach so far has been global agreements like the Montreal Protocol, which phased out the production of ODS. As a result, the ozone layer has been gradually recovering. While these ideas have been discussed, no large-scale geoengineering solutions for ozone repair have been implemented due to the risks, uncertainties, and the complexity of Earth's atmospheric systems. So then I asked ChatGPT, what is the current status on nanotechnology and its capabilities? And ChatGPT responded, nanotechnology has made significant advancements in recent years, and its capabilities continue to expand across a range of fields from medicine to electronics to materials science. Here are some key areas where nanotechnology is making an impact. Medicine and healthcare, drug delivery, diagnostics, regenerative medicines, electronics and computing, energy and environment. This is where I wanted to talk about nanotechnology and solar cells. Nanotechnology is being used to develop more efficient and flexible solar cells. Quantum dots and other nanomaterials can improve the efficiency of light absorption and energy conversion in photovoltaic cells. Batteries. Nanotechnology is improving the capacity, lifespan, and charging speeds of batteries. Naomi, this one's for you because, your batteries never last in your controller for your Xbox. For instance, nanomaterials like graphene are being explored for use in lithium-ion batteries and supercapacitors, offering the potential for more durable and higher performing energy storage systems. Water purification, nanoparticles, and nanomembranes are being developed for use in water filtration and purification systems. These technologies can remove contaminants more effectively, including bacteria, viruses, heavy metals, and chemicals. Then there's materials science, stronger, lighter materials. Nanotechnology allows for the creation of materials with enhanced properties, such as greater strength, lighter weight, and better thermal or electrical conductivity. Graphene, carbon nanotubes, and nanocomposites are examples of materials with applications in aerospace construction and automotive industries. Self-healing materials. Researchers are developing nanomaterials that can repair themselves when damaged. These materials could be used in coatings, paints, or structural components, reducing maintenance and extending lifespan of products. Even food and agriculture, food preservation. Nanotechnology is being used to develop food packaging materials that extend shelf life by detecting spoilage or preventing contamination. Nanoparticles can also be used to create coatings that block out harmful gases or bacteria. There's also precision agriculture. Nanosensors are being developed to monitor soil conditions, detect pests, and manage water and nutrient use more efficiently in agriculture, leading to more sustainable farming practices. Even in defense and security, nanotechnology is being used to develop lightweight, flexible, and highly durable materials for use in body armor, helmets, and other protective gear for soldiers and first responders. Sensors and surveillance. Nanotechnology is enabling the development of highly sensitive sensors for detecting chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear threats. These sensors can be deployed in drones or integrated into surveillance systems for security purposes. There are also challenges and risks. There are concerns about the potential toxicity of some nanomaterials and their long-term environmental effects. Nanoparticles may interact with biological systems in unpredictable ways, and more research is needed to understand their safety. And regulation and ethics. As nanotechnology continues to advance, regulatory frameworks will need to evolve to address issues such as safety, privacy, and ethical considerations, particularly in areas like medicine and defense. There's also future directions it could go, like molecular manufacturing. Researchers are working on techniques for molecular manufacturing, where individual atoms or molecules can be precisely positioned to create highly complex and efficient systems. This is still largely theoretical, but holds great promise for fields like manufacturing and materials science. In the future, nanorobots could be used in medicine to perform tasks like repairing tissues, delivering drugs, or even fighting infections at a molecular level. While this concept is still in its infancy, early research in this direction is underway. Um, then uh, I asked ChatGPT, I'd like to discuss a few things about myself that have to do with religious and political beliefs. I'd like to challenge you to challenge my beliefs, but also even improve my beliefs. Um, it agreed. And I said, I'd like to start with a fundamental belief of mine, which is that all life is precious. That's a powerful and profound belief, it says. The idea that all life is precious touches on ethics, morality, spirituality, and even political ideology. To challenge or refine this belief, let's explore some complexities and potential nuances. Does all life include non-human animals, plants, and microorganisms, or do you primarily mean human life? What happens when preserving one form of life conflicts with another? For example, many human actions, farming, urban development, medical research, often involve the harm or destruction of other life forms. How do you reconcile these conflicts? There's moral dilemmas, like how does this belief apply in situations where lives are in conflict, such as in war, self-defense, or even medical ethics? Uh, if all life is precious, how do you approach cases where saving one life may result in the loss of another? Is there ever a situation where value of life is relative or hierarchical? Capital punishment and justice. If all life is precious, should even those who take lives be entitled to preservation of their own,
How
or do their actions
how do we go from
disqualify them?
how do we go from nanomachines to capital punishment?
Well, I'm getting there in a second. Um, Environmentalism and sustainability. In terms of environmental ethics, how do you balance the needs of human life with the need to protect ecosystems and other species? Can the destruction of some life, like harmful bacteria or invasive species, be justified to protect others? In a world facing climate change and biodiversity loss, does this belief inform how we treat the environment and how we prioritize certain forms of life over others for the survival of ecosystems? There's also political and societal implications. How does your belief that all life is precious influence your political stance on issues like healthcare, social justice, poverty, and war? Uh, the nature of suffering and if all life is precious, how does this belief address the question of suffering? In some cases, prolonging life can lead to prolonged suffering, terminal illnesses, or severe trauma. How do you balance the preciousness of life with the relief of suffering? Um, and I responded, I do mean all life, including non-human animals and plants and microorganisms. I do also think that my life is precious, and I would protect my life by any means necessary. I don't believe in war, because I believe war is fought by people who may or may not agree with the people that sent them into war. Basically, the so-called leaders who put people to war are putting the people that fight the war in danger for all for temporary things, such as resources and land. I don't believe the value of life is relative or hierarchical. However, in saving one life, we must do what we can to save the other. And if nothing can be done to save the other, then we must come to terms with the loss of that life. Perhaps my belief that all life is precious also comes with the idea that life is also fragile, and we must come to terms with that fact. I think that when it comes to capital punishment, individuals who commit serious crimes such as murder or terrorism should be rehabilitated. Perhaps we should come to an understanding of why those people committed those crimes instead of trying to punish them for committing the crimes in the first place. I feel we should seek to understand these individuals. Maybe they should be researched and studied. Regardless, their actions should not disqualify them from the principle that all life is precious. Humans should live in harmony with the ecosystem, and it is shameful to me that we do not live in harmony most of the time with our ecosystems. It's a heavy burden to bear for me knowing that I'm human. I think that we should prioritize our own lives first, but also when our needs are met, we should then prioritize our environments and our ecosystems. I believe every individual should have health care, food, and basic human rights. I believe it should be the right of the person who is terminally ill to determine whether or not they want to live or die. If a person is so terminally ill that they cannot decide for themselves, and they are close to death, or if they are brain dead, that they should be euthanized. I don't believe in being brain dead or terminally ill is considered living, because how is someone supposed to live their life if they are brain dead or terminally ill? This is why I believe in assisted suicide. This is especially the case with animals as well. If an animal is too sick to keep going, we shouldn't prolong their suffering. We should take care of our animals, sure, but when it comes to suffering, we shouldn't prolong it because suffering is not living. Then ChatGPT responded, "Your beliefs are well considered and rooted in compassion for all forms of life, both human and non-human. There's a deep sense of ethical responsibility in your stance, and you've highlighted the complexities of balancing the value of life with the reality of suffering and fragility. To engage further and challenge some of these perspectives, I'll raise a few more questions and reflections. Rehabilitation for serious crimes. I appreciate your belief that even those who commit serious crimes should be rehabilitated rather than punished. However, what would you say about individuals who repeatedly show no remorse or continue to pose a significant danger to others, even after attempts at rehabilitation? Could there be instances where society might prioritize the safety and well-being of the collective over the life of an individual who has committed violent crimes? Would there be ethical limits to rehabilitation? You strongly oppose war, which is consistent with your belief that all life is precious. However, in situations where groups or nations are threatened by an aggressor, how do you balance the need for self-defense with your anti-war stance? If a country is invaded, for instance, is there ever a moral justification for defending one's homeland, even though it may lead to loss of life? How do you navigate the tension between the sanctity of life and the need for survival in such scenarios? You support the right of terminally ill individuals to choose assisted suicide, and similarly for animals to avoid prolonged suffering. This reflects a nuanced view that recognizes suffering as a condition that detracts from the quality of life. Could this perspective lead to complexities in deciding when life is worth preserving versus ending? For example, how do you handle gray areas where quality of life is subjective, such as individuals with disabilities or chronic illnesses, who may live with significant challenges, but do not necessarily see their condition as incompatible with living a meaningful life? Your belief in prioritizing human needs first, followed by the environment, reflects a balanced view of human survival and ecological responsibility. However, you do not see any tension between these two priorities. However, do you see any tension between these two priorities, particularly when human needs such as food production or urban development can have detrimental effects on ecosystems? In cases where human survival and environmental preservation are in direct conflict, how would you resolve these dilemmas? Would there be instances where the preservation of an ecosystem might take precedence over human expansion or consumption? These questions are not meant to undermine your beliefs, but to explore their boundaries and implications. So I said, When it comes to individuals who repeatedly show no remorse or continue to pose a significant threat to others, even after attempts at rehabilitation, I believe that their life is still precious because they still have the potential to give something valuable to our society. If we were to study these people and learn from them, and learn their ideologies, their interests, how they grew up, anything and everything we could take from them on a psychological scale to learn how to prevent or even rehabilitate other people that repeatedly show no remorse or continue to pose a threat or pose a significant danger to others, I do believe there is much we could learn from these individuals, but we must try to understand them in order to learn from them. Even in the case of learning from their mistakes, we could possibly benefit as a society where maybe we went wrong. Maybe there are societal issues that contributed to these individuals and their actions. Maybe there are environmental issues that contributed to these individuals and their actions. I don't think we would know these things using capital punishment. I think studying these people is more important than putting them to death. I strongly oppose war, yes. I also believe in self defense. If someone powerful becomes tyrannical, we should do our best to stop them. But I think war should be our last resort. I don't think we should resort to war at all. I think the people that go to war for these tyrannical individuals should lay down their arms in direct conflict to their tyrannical leaders and seize them. I think, especially in the case of World War II, Hitler should have been imprisoned and studied, maybe even rehabilitated. If a country is invaded, it shouldn't be about preserving or defending one's homeland, but rather one's self. There are ways to defend oneself without killing. I believe quality of life is subjective, which is why we should study a person before we end their suffering. I believe we could learn from every life, and if a person chooses to end their life, they should be studied first before we grant them their choice. Perhaps in studying them before they die, we might learn a few things that make them decide that they don't want to die. I do not understand what you mean by individuals with disabilities or chronic illnesses who may live with significant challenges, but do not necessarily see their conditions incompatible with living a meaningful life. And I would like for you to elaborate what you mean on that so I can better understand the question and answer it. I don't see any tension between the two priorities of prioritizing oneself and the environment, and then the environment, because when in practice, we can take care of ourselves and we can take care of our environment because we have the power to do both collectively. I think we should preserve an ecosystem by expanding the ecosystem with ourselves. For example, if we were to build a city in a jungle, we would have to build the city around the jungle and within it, without harming it. We should take great care in not affecting the jungle and its ecosystem when expanding into it. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that we should harmonize our expansion with the ecosystem we're expanding into. And then ChatGPT replied, "Thank you for elaborating on your views. To clarify the question on individuals with disabilities or chronic illnesses, I was referring to people who live with physical or mental conditions that might seem challenging, but who still find meaning and value in their lives. For example, someone with a chronic illness may endure pain or limitations, but they may not consider their condition a reason to end their life because they still find joy, purpose, or fulfillment. How do you reconcile your belief in assisted suicide with the fact that some people who face significant challenges still live meaningful lives? Should society be cautious in offering assisted suicide to ensure that people aren't pressured into it due to their circumstances? As for harmonizing human expansion with ecosystems, I appreciate your vision of a world where development and nature coexist without harming the environment.
This ideal is beautiful, but in practice it can be difficult to balance human needs like agriculture or housing with preserving ecosystems, especially in densely populated areas. How do you envision this harmony being achieved in a larger scale? For example, if building infrastructure or farming were needed to sustain human populations but threatened ecosystems, how would you prioritize or mediate between the two? And then I replied, I think that an individual with a chronic illness who still finds joy, purpose, or fulfillment in their life should have the right to continue living. I would like to clarify that assisted suicide should only be an option if they choose, so long as they are studied first. I envision the harmony between human expansion with ecosystems being achieved on a larger scale by integrating nature into our infrastructure. I think we focus a lot on artificial ecosystems rather than trying to integrate the ecosystem into our artificial infrastructure. I imagine homes with trees, not just on the outside, but on the inside. Maybe some of the indigenous plant life and animal life could be integrated into the infrastructure of our cities by integrating a sort of highway for these animals to migrate based on their migration patterns. If we can't preserve certain ecosystems, maybe we can move them to a place where they can be protected. As far as farming is concerned, there are ways to build farms a certain way so that they won't harm the ecosystem, but also sustain our populations, such as growing plants like corn with other plants such as beans and squash like the Native Americans did. ChatGPT said, your vision of integrating nature into human infrastructure and allowing ecosystems to coexist with cities is innovative and inspiring. The idea of creating highways for animals and using sustainable farming techniques rooted in indigenous knowledge could significantly reduce the environmental impact of urbanization. To reflect on your thoughts about assisted suicide, hello, what's up? Um, to reflect on your thoughts, I think Knuckles is not muted. To reflect on your thoughts about assisted suicide, I appreciate your sensitivity towards the subjective nature of suffering and your desire to ensure that individuals are studied before making such decisions. This reinforces your belief that every life has something valuable to teach us, even in difficult circumstances. What would you say that your belief in integrating nature into infrastructure stems from a broader philosophical or spiritual perspective on the interconnectedness of life? And I responded simply with, I believe all things are interconnected because all things arise mutually. Um, it also said, your belief in the interconnectedness of all things emphasizes a profound understanding of how life and the environment are deeply entwined. This perspective aligns with your ideas on integrating nature into human infrastructure, as it reflects the idea that humans are not separate from the natural world, but part of it. How does this belief in mutual arising influence your views on other societal issues, such as governance or economics? And I said, I do not know. Can we dive into these issues? And it said, absolutely. Governance. If all things are interconnected, how do you think leadership should operate in a society? Should leaders view their decisions as having far reaching effects on both people and the environment? For instance, how might a government that recognizes the mutual arising of all things approach decisions about resource management, education, or healthcare differently from current models? Decentralized power. Do you believe that decision making should be more decentralized, with power distributed across communities? since each part of society is connected and equally important? How do you envision balancing the autonomy of local communities with the need for larger scale governance on national or global issues? Economics. How would your belief affect how resources are distributed in an economic system? If all life and systems are interconnected, would you favor an economic model that emphasizes more equitable sharing of resources to ensure all people and ecosystems can thrive? For example, how might businesses operate differently in an economy where profit is not prioritized over the well being of both people and the planet? How do you think economic systems should account for long term environmental sustainability? If the economy and ecosystems are interdependent, do you envision a shift towards localized economies that focus on sustainable farming, renewable energy, and small scale production? I replied, I think that leadership should operate in a society like a collective. Instead of allowing people to represent a group of people so that they can impose their laws on everyone, perhaps everyone should represent themselves, and the laws that are passed in our society should be carefully implemented in a unanimous decision. Then it said, your idea of collective leadership and unanimous decision making reflects a vision of deep participatory democracy, where every individual has a direct role in shaping laws and policies. This approach could potentially address some issues with representation and inclusivity. Here are a few considerations to explore further. Feasibility. How might a system of unanimous decision making function in practice, especially in large, diverse societies? What mechanisms could be put in place to ensure that all voices are heard and considered without causing gridlock? Could modern technology facilitate this kind of system, or might it introduce new challenges related to accessibility, security, or misinformation? Uh, consensus building. How would consensus be built in a way that respects diverse perspectives and prevents marginalization? What processes could be necessary to address disagreements and find common ground? Conflict resolution. What methods could be employed to resolve conflicts and make decisions where there are irreconcilable differences among members of the society? Direct representation versus practicality. While the idea of everyone representing themselves is appealing, in practice, how might society manage complex issues that require specialized knowledge or expertise? Would there still be a role for experts or facilitators in this system? Uh, Scalability, local versus global. How would this model scale from local communities to larger nations or global issues? Would there need to be different approaches at various levels to maintain effective governance while respecting collective decision making? And I said, I think we have the technology to make decisions collectively. Smart devices are practically in everyone's hands, and hopefully before long, so will their connection to the World Wide Web. Different countries have different problems, and those issues need to be addressed accordingly. But if everyone in those countries had a say in what happens and what laws are passed, technology that we have now could be used to implement their ideas and views into their societies. And then ChatGPT responded, technological platforms for collective decision making, digital voting systems, participatory platforms, addressing local and global issues like localized solutions, like technology could help tailor solutions to help specific local issues by enabling community members to propose and vote on initiatives that directly impact their area. For example, local projects could be managed through community-driven apps. Um, Global coordination. At the global level, technology could enable collaboration and information sharing between different regions to address transnational challenges, such as climate change or health pandemics, ensuring inclusivity, access, and equity. Efforts would need to be made to ensure that all citizens have access to the necessary technology and are digitally literate. This could involve investing in digital infrastructure and education to prevent disparities. Continuous feedback loops could be established to ensure that all voices are heard and that the system remains responsive to the needs of different communities. Incorporating expertise, while direct participation is valuable, there might still be a role for experts who can provide specialized knowledge. Technology could facilitate the integration of expert opinions and research into the decision making process, ensuring that complex issues are addressed effectively. Um, then I said, um, it's not a book, it's just a conversation I've been having with ChatGPT for a while. Um, I also mentioned I think that we could become an interstellar species and we could use the resources around us to become more powerful. And we could also use simple yet effective ways to manage our resources, such as using nanotechnology and quantum computing to absorb more sunlight in our solar panels, like we mentioned before, so that we can produce more energy. I definitely think education should be revamped, and so should healthcare. I'd like to discuss education and healthcare specifically, which I won't get into that right now. Um, I think that decision making should be based on distributing the power to everyone. For example, in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, a lot of people were made homeless because of flooding. And while efforts were probably made to save these homeless people from being homeless, I don't think much was done to make a powerful impact in the community. The government, I think, made it harder for these people to get off the streets and back into homes where they belong. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Um, as far as that goes, um, there's a lot of issues, right, that, you know, we as humans create for ourselves. And, a lot of these overlap with, the very uh, environment that we live in. And, some laws or some acts that we pass and, some things that we do, like, creating pipelines for oil to, traverse, across large distances, and it could affect, like a lot of different things, like, animals, migrations, like the very vegetation that it goes over, you know, but I think the big issue here is we're talking about saving the earth, right? And we as humans are in conflict with ourselves as far as like a society is concerned. We are in conflict with ourselves and how we're going to address different issues. Ultimately, everything that I say doesn't matter because in the end, there's going to be an ultimatum. There's going to be a decision that's going to be made about all these different issues. But I can only make proposals for these issues in hopes that someone will listen and someone will possibly integrate these ideas into reality, you know. But what do you think, Knuckles?
Well, there was a lot to unpack because a lot of it just came so fast. and then it was gone. And it's really hard to touch on one subject that you were talking with ChatGPT about, because I guess it was just released. The Kraken. You released the Kraken, so to really grab onto one, we didn't really have much time to, like, I guess, unpack the conversation. There's a lot of things you touched base on, and there's a lot of things that who can't you hear, Glory? Me or Mike?
I can't hear Glory.
Glory's on our stream.
Oh, nice. Welcome, Glory.
Let's see.
Oh, nice. Welcome, Glory.
Okay, yeah, no, you are definitely being received on the stream. Like, Glory says hi.
Hi, Glory.
It's been a while, my friend.
Been a long while.
Keep talking, man. Keep
Long,
talking.
long time ago.
I really wish microphone. I don't know what's wrong with it and why it sounds the way it does. It really shouldn't. But anyway, yo. So to talk about saving the Earth, like we were discussing earlier, there's a lot of intricacies here that you talked about, right? And there's a lot of micro issues that make up a macro issue. But according to ChatGPT, the major issue that Earth is facing right now is indeed the climate change. So, getting everybody to stop what they're doing right now is just too late, and we need to essentially figure out how to resolve the climate change issue, and then once that's resolved, then we need to work on the individual offenders of this, and then we need to identify the individual offenders who contribute the most to the climate change. And like we were talking about earlier, it's not the micro influencers of this, it's the macro influencers, the ones who create the most carbon footprints. And those are the people who are putting the buck off onto the macro influencers, the individuals. So I believe just starting with how to resolve the climate change issue is the biggest issue that we've got to deal with. Resolving that first, we need to figure that out. And like we were talking about yesterday, capturing these global, or the greenhouse emissions, and exporting them outside of the Earth would be the most effective solution in terms of actually reducing these gases, right? And then also creating a benefit by this excess gas by putting it to somewhere that needs this kind of gas, like Mars, right? So even if we have the capsules, we take them, we ship them to Mars, and then those capsules stay there until Mars's core is able to be reliquefied to create a magnetic field. Those gases will be there when it's needed, right? And then
Yeah.
once we've resolved that climate change issue, then we start tackling the big players, right? So identifying the big players is also part of the plan if we're going to save Earth from the immediate crisis. But there's also other crises. Who would be the
Hey,
first to go to Mars? Well, it only takes about 6 to 9 months to go to Mars. And technically, we don't need to send a person to Mars. We just need to send the capsules to Mars, right? And then they could essentially just time release or be remotely unlocked and opened to let loose the gas. We don't need anybody there, essentially, to do that, right? So, and that gas would just go. Yesterday, Mike and I figured out how to deal with the excess silica issue on Mars by using algae, and we found articles relating to a moss that can survive Mars's climate. So we'd be able to put the moss and the algae on the planet, and it would be able to sort of pioneer biology, I guess, onto Earth, or not to Earth, onto Mars. But we were still talking yesterday about the key issue. Yes, the atmosphere's thin. We can restore the atmosphere of Mars, but we can't reignite the core, so the magnetic field on Mars retains the atmosphere. So that is the core issue, is the magnetic field of Mars. The core issue for Earth right now is climate change. And Elon Musk essentially probably would be the one to pioneer this. He's already established, essentially, to be able to do this kind of thing.
So me and ChatGPT had a discussion just now about the Earth's atmosphere and CO2 emissions. I asked it the question, could cooling down the atmosphere of Earth make it easier to capture CO2 emissions in the atmosphere? And ChatGPT responded, yes, cooling down the Earth's atmosphere could potentially make it easier to capture CO2 emissions, but it depends on how the cooling is achieved and the method used for CO2 capture. 1, physical absorption. Lower temperatures generally increase the solubility of CO2 in liquids. For instance, in direct air capture systems that use liquid solvents to absorb CO2, cooler temperatures might enhance the absorption efficiency, as the CO2 is more soluble in cooler liquid. Chemical absorption. Some chemical processes used to capture CO2, like those involving amine-based, or is it amine or amine? I can't tell,
I'm
but
not
it's
sure.
amine-based solvents may also become more efficient at lower temperature. This could reduce the energy required for the capture process, making it more effective. Cryogenic capture. One method of capturing CO2 involves cooling the air to very low temperatures, where CO2 can be condensed and separated from other gases. Cooler ambient temperatures could reduce the energy needed for this process. And it got me thinking about how we can use aerosols to cool down the temperature of the Earth so that it's, not as extreme in the weather patterns and the currents in the ocean and everything.
Wouldn't we just have to just
And
go higher up in the sky to capture these CO2 emissions because it's naturally cooler up there? It gets pretty cold the higher you get.
well, the idea behind a current, as far as temperature is concerned, is that cold tends to rise,
Heat
and
rises.
heat and well, heat rises too, but eventually it cools and then it starts to go down, and then it heats up again, and then it starts to rise, and then it cools and goes down again. So the idea here is that we're using cooler climates to capture these. We're taking advantage of a cooler climate to more efficiently capture these CO2 emissions.
So just go capture the CO2 emissions that in like by Antarctica, you know, it's colder there.
Yeah, but they're more concentrated near warmer parts of the Earth because of our emissions and stuff. We're not in Antarctica. I mean, though Antarctica is where the ozone layer has a hole in it. Um, you know, the point being is that we want to cool down the overall temperature of the Earth. Hello?
Oh, I'm still here. I was just processing the information, I guess. So, I mean, I'm like I understand that it would be a little beneficial to cool the Earth down to capture. Hello?
Hello.
What was that? Oh, did
I'm
you
just on
join the
whiteboard.
whiteboard? Oh, okay, cool. All right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't really believe it's necessary to cool the CO2 down to capture it. I think we could still capture enough CO2 to resolve some of the immediate urgency that that the climate change, you know. I think we're over complicating things, and usually the rule is to keep it simple, right? So if we're trying to, like, yes, it's complicated, but there's also probably something stupid simple that we're overlooking.
What would that be?
Well, that's for us to figure out. Well, first let's ask ChatGPT, Glory, how do you catch CO2? So it says, capturing CO2, or carbon dioxide, typically involves several methods that fall into two main categories: pre combustion and post combustion capture. Here's a brief overview of the most common methods. Pre combustion capture, gasification. In this method, fossil fuels like coal are converted into a mixture of hydrogen and CO2 at high temperatures. The CO2 is then separated from the hydrogen before the hydrogen is used as fuel. Reforming natural gas is converted into hydrogen and CO2 using steam. The CO2 is then captured before the hydrogen is used for energy. So they're using steam, which is hot, right, to capture CO2. So that's kind of opposite. Post-combustion capture. Absorption. CO2 is absorbed from the flue gases using solvents like amine solutions. The CO2-rich solvent is then heated to release the CO2, which is captured and compressed. Absorption. CO2 is captured by materials, absorbents, that hold the gas on their surface. Once saturated, the absorbent is heated or pressurized to release the CO2. Then there's membrane separation. Specialized membranes allow CO2 to pass through while blocking other gases. This method is often used in combination with other capture technologies. Well, I think that one is sort of similar to like a catalytic converter, maybe. Cryogenic distillation. CO2 is separated by cooling the flue gases to very low temperatures, where CO2 condenses into a liquid or solid form, which is then separated from other gases. So, and then there's also a thing called direct air capture, which is a chemical process. Technologies use chemicals to capture CO2 directly from ambient air. These systems typically involve passing air through a chemical solution or solid that binds to CO2, which is then processed to release the CO2 in a concentrated form. And then there's biological capture, algae cultivation. Algae and other microorganisms can capture CO2 from the atmosphere during photosynthesis. The captured CO2 is then processed into biofuels or other products. Then soil and forest management. Enhancing natural processes like soil, carbon sequestration, or forest growth can capture CO2 from the atmosphere. These methods are used individually or in combination to reduce CO2 emissions and mitigate climate change. So with this entire list, reading the direct air capture, I felt like releasing hot air balloons into the sky that had this chemical process, right? Technologies use chemicals to capture CO2 directly from ambient air. The systems typically involve passing air through a chemical solution or solid that binds to CO2. So essentially, you could probably create these containers that are around like a basket of hot air balloon, and as it's floating through the sky, it could essentially be capturing excess CO2. And then instead of using a plane or something to fly through the air, I think a hot air balloon or a weather balloon or something would be good. And you could probably rig up a hot air balloon, because I think that might be best because it tends to flow with air currents too, right? So it would go where maybe it's needed, and then with those containers on the outside, you could absorb that direct air captured CO2 and store it in those containers. What do you think about that, Mike?
I think that's a wonderful idea. Using hot air balloons to capture, different gases in the atmosphere that are harmful for the atmosphere and could potentially heat it up even more.
Right.
I think with the flow of the air currents and everything, these balloons would basically work by themselves.
Right? You'd have to have some sort of like remote system to continuously keep the balloon floating, and then like a GPS to be able to like retrieve when you want it to land,
Or you could keep them afloat and find a way to to extract the gases from the balloons
for
without
fuel for
making
fuel
them
to
come
continue
down.
to for fuel. Yeah, I was thinking the exact same thing. Why, if you're capturing the right things in the sky, you could convert some of these gases into small amounts of fuel to be able to keep the balloon afloat. But eventually, you'd have to they'd fill up, so you'd have to put new containers on them, so they'd have to come down eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah, a weather balloon, Glory, like a weather balloon, 100%. Like that. But I don't know the weight limit to what a weather balloon could hold, right? And I would assume that these containers would be rather large. And I know an air balloon has a certain amount of weight that it can carry, so I thought maybe a weather or a hot air balloon might be better to be able to carry more containers, right? So let's ask ChatGPT to develop a container that would be on a hot air balloon that would direct air capture. The required gases to help reduce global warming. Okay, well, we don't need to worry about the design considerations. We just need the air capture technology. Lightweight, durable materials that can withhold or withstand varying temperatures and atmospheric conditions. Consider materials like carbon fiber or reinforced composites. The container should be aerodynamically efficient and designed to minimize drag. It could be a cylindrical or streamlined shape to fit the balloon's framework. So DAC units. Integrate DAC units that use chemical absorbents or solid absorbents to capture CO2 from the air. These units should be compact and efficient to fit within the balloon's weight limits. Regeneration system. Incorporate a system to release captured CO2 from the absorbents or sorbents, usually involving heating or pressure changes. The CO2 should be stored in a separate tank for later use or safe disposal. Energy source, power supply. The DAC system will need power, which could be provided by lightweight solar panels integrated into the balloon's surface or small, efficient generator. Energy storage. Consider battery storage to ensure that the system can operate independently of the balloon's immediate power needs. Storage tanks. Design tanks or containers to store the captured CO2. These should be robust and secure with valves and pressure controls to manage the CO2. Monitoring systems. Integrate sensors and monitoring systems to track the amount of CO2 captured. Okay, that makes sense. Mounting, ventilation, testing, optimization, safety, deployment. One question I want to ask,
Maybe
though,
we could use.
can we
Okay.
use what's captured to create the fuel needed to run the balloon and DAC? Yes, it's possible to use the captured CO2 to create fuel for running the hot air balloon and its direct air capture system, though it involves complex processes. Here's a general outline of how you could achieve this. CO2 conversion to fuel, carbon capture and utilization. Fuel synthesis. Use captured CO2 as a feedstock for producing synthetic fuels. Common methods include hydrogenation, electrochemical reduction, and photosynthesis. Electrolyzers, catalysts, and reactors. Small-scale production for set up a compact system on the balloon to produce the required fuel. This could include electrolyzer, reactors, and storage. Burners, energy systems, energy storage, generators. So essentially,
We could use these same balloons to like over time, like put aerosols into the atmosphere that cools the earth down.
Had a mirrored fabric that helped repel some heat from the earth to cool it down.
Using aerosols.
Using mirrored fabric on hot air balloons to reflect some of the heat from the Earth and potentially help cool the planet is an intriguing idea. Here's how this could work and the considerations involved. So, you know how you're talking about having like mirrors and reflecting things to help cool the That's a good question, Glory. How much CO2 is needed to affect change? That's a really great question, actually. Change in the climate change crisis. The amount of CO2 required to significantly impact climate change depends on various factors, including the context of mitigation efforts and the scale of reduction. Here's current CO2 pre-industrial levels before the Industrial Revolution. Atmospheric CO2 levels were around 280 parts per million. Current levels as of 2024, approximately 420 parts per million. So, the Paris Agreement, the goal is to limit global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. Did you leave the whiteboard, Mike? We lost Mike. I don't know where Mike went. So it's all about degrees and temperatures from what I see right now, but from what I see here for the pre-industrial levels for 280 and the current levels but 420, it looks like we would need approximately 140 parts per million to decrease to get to pre-industrial revolution levels, and I'm thinking maybe putting it to 240 may be a better goal. Welcome back, Mike.
Thank you.
I don't know what happened to you, my friend.
Problems.
So, the parts per million, we would say, capture requirements. If a project aims to offset 1% of global annual emissions, it would need to capture and sequester 400 million tons of CO2 per year. Achieving this with current technologies is challenging and costly, but could be feasible with technological advances and supportive policies. So, 400 tons per year. We want to take the parts per million from 420 to 240 using the hot air balloon method. And we need to know how many balloons would be needed to accomplish this in 6 months. Ooh, I like that fancy looking stuff. To estimate the number of hot air balloons needed to reduce atmospheric CO2 from 420 to 400 over 6 months using the direct air capture method, follow these steps. Initial concentration 420, so we need to reduce it by 180 parts per million. Calculate the total atmospheric CO2 mass, which is
Uh-oh. Did you lose
Do-do-do-do.
me again?
No,
Oh.
I'm still here. Assume each balloon can capture a certain amount of CO2 per day. This number will depend on... Okay, here we go. Here's the answer. Approximately 515 million balloons would be required to achieve this reduction in 6 months, assuming each balloon captures 1 ton per day. Divide this between all the countries. Divide this task between all major countries. Oh my gosh, China, 30% of global emissions. Oof. Okay, so how many balloons would each country need? Well, it says that deploying such a large number of balloons is not practically feasible with current technology. The numbers illustrate the scale of effort needed. So, China would need 150 million balloons. United States would need 77.2 million balloons. But what was the initial balloon number? Because I feel like that might be wrong, what it's giving us. 515 million balloons is what was needed, right? Okay. So we've got 154 million.
Balloons have to be?
Huh?
How big do the balloons have to be?
Well, that's a good question too. You'd think they'd have to be at least big enough to support. Well, what if? Hold on. Now, what if each balloon could carry more than one was it DCA or DAC device? We'll just say if each hot air balloon could carry multiple CO2 capture devices, the number of balloons required could be significantly reduced. Well, that's good, right? So if, say, it could have 6. What if it could have 6 devices? And then another question to ask is, how, if there is, after we get the right number of balloons with the right number of devices, and each of them are using sort of like a reflective material on the outside of the balloons, like we were talking about having the reflective materials, how much would that affect the temperature of Earth too, right?
Maybe.
So let's find that out. What was the number that they've given us here? We've got 10 devices per balloon. So it's significantly changed from, it's now 15.4 million balloons for China. Russia only needs 2.6 million balloons. That's a lot of devices, though.
Yeah, but how big are they?
That's a lot of devices. Manufacturing that amount of devices, though.
Might take less time than you would think.
Well, we'll see.
I mean, we don't have to release all of them at once. Could we release one and then make another and then release that one until we collectively make the amount necessary to make a substantial change?
Well, if it's 515 million balloons that they needed, then they were assuming that it was one balloon per one device per balloon, and we need 515.
You said 500.
And 15 million.
So there is 8 billion people on the earth, approximately. You there?
Yeah, so we could all make one, essentially.
Yeah,
Like,
and then some.
like, let's assume the numbers. Let's say it'd take a week for a person to build one. Right?
Yeah. And of
then,
course we have robots that could make them too.
And factories. So a week, we could probably manufacture those in a week. 2 weeks. Give it a month, just for safe, you know. Design.
It sounds like something that could be done right now.
Design a device that a regular person at home could build today to achieve this function.
Glory says, sounds like new jobs.
Hey, look at that, Glory. That does sound like new jobs, doesn't it? Designing a CO2 capture device from home use that could feasibly be built with available materials and technologies involves creating a simple, effective system that leverages known methods. It didn't say it wasn't possible, ma'am. So, here is the design concept for home CO2 capture device. And they give us a little simplified sketch. You know, it's got a fan and inlet tubing, outlet tubing, filter, container with absorbent material. That is it, ma'am. But if every person in the world created one in a week,
maybe a month,
that could have an impact? Question mark. If every person in the world created and used a CO2 capture device like the one described, it could indeed have a significant impact on CO2 levels. The assumption is each homemade device captures a certain amount of CO2 per day. For simplicity, let's assume each device captures 1 kilogram of CO2 per day. Global population, approximately 8 billion people. Total CO2 captured per week if everyone makes a device. So it'd be 56 million tons a week we would capture. Current global CO2 emissions, approximately 36 billion tons per year. Weekly emissions, 36 billion tons. So it's 692 million tons a week. So weekly capture potential versus emissions is 8.1% is what we'd be capturing. If every person built and used a CO2 capture device for a week, it could theoretically capture about 8.1% of the global CO2 emissions for that week. While this is a significant amount, it is important to consider realistically not every person would build and operate the device effectively. The actual capture efficiency could be lower due to practical challenges and variations in device effectiveness. Sustainability. The impact is based on a 1-week effort. Long-term sustainability and continuous operation could be needed to maintain any significant reduction. The idea of each person creating and using a CO2 capture device for a week presents an interesting concept with the potential to capture a notable percentage of. However, achieving this on a global scale would require overcoming significant logistical, practical, and technical challenges. For more substantial and sustained impact, scalable, efficient, and professionally managed CO2 capture and reduction technologies would be necessary. So, no, that's with the simplicity of it, with the simplicity of the device being made, theoretically, each person could make more than one in a month. If each person could build more than one capture device in a month, the potential for impact increases significantly. If each device captures 1 kilogram of CO2 per day, each person builds and uses M devices a month, which, M is whatever we're going to decide. Daily capture equals M devices. Okay, so let's say they build 6 in a month. Six devices per person. So we're looking at 1.44 billion tons in a month captured. Current global emissions approximately 36 billion tons a year. Monthly emissions, so we're looking at 3 billion tons a month, which is 48%. Mike?
Yeah.
48%. If each person built this simplistic CO2 capture device, 6 of them, each person in the world, 6 of them, and the stuff is very easy to make and get a hold of. It involves a plastic jug and a fan. If you anyway, 48% we'd be able to capture. capsule. 48% of global CO2 emissions for that month is substantial. This scenario demonstrates a significant impact, but practical yeah. We get it. We get that, but it's totally feasible. That they could make 6. Each person could make 6. You know,
Right.
because it's literally like it's a jug. You've got a fan. You've got inlet tubing, outlet tubing. You've got a filter, and then there's a container with absorbent material. It's just there. It's like a sponge soaking up, you know. Like
Right.
it's just there. So if you put it out, like everybody builds 6 and they put it on their roofs or they put it out in posts or, you know, and they just head them or they line them up and built like a stand, 6 of them on like a stand. They've got billboards all over the place. You know what I mean? Like if every person had them, it would reduce 48% of the monthly CO2 emissions.
That's incredible.
But let's ask the critical question. How does this affect global warming in this scenario? If the global effort of each person building and using 6 CO2 capture devices in a month captures 40% of monthly global CO2 emissions, the potential impact on global warming can be significant. Here's a detailed breakdown. Let's see now. If 48% of monthly emissions are captured, it directly reduces the amount of CO2 entering the atmosphere. Over time, this reduction could contribute to slowing the increase in atmospheric CO2 concentrations. CO2 is a greenhouse gas, and reducing its concentration can help mitigate global warming. A significant reduction in atmospheric CO2 can contribute to slowing the rise. Climate models. So it doesn't fully counteract climate change, but it can complement larger systemic efforts. Yeah, well, it says reducing emissions at the source, transitioning to renewable energy, and implementing large-scale carbon capture technologies. Yeah, right there, large-scale carbon capture technologies. So that was on the individual effort, right? So now let's see what the government can do. How can we build them?
Hello?
I'm still here.
Alright. I get scared that silence means one of us got disconnected.
Create an absolute plan for our governments to build effective devices to correct the climate issue funding and support. No research. We don't need research. We build on what we have now and the methods we know now to create what's needed now. If the focus is on utilizing existing technologies and methods to build effective carbon capture devices and address the climate change immediately, streamline practical plan. Post-combustion, direct air. Yeah, we know the methods. Tax credits and grants. No, the government is going to do this. No, the government is going to build them with the government money they have and the resources they have. If the government is leading the charge to build large-scale carbon capture systems using public funds and resources, well, why wouldn't they lead the charge? They're the ones in charge of the world. Every country is in charge of their own place. This world has climate change happening. These are the leaders. Leaders take the lead. Leaders make the charge. These are the people who allowed everything to happen, so they're the ones who are responsible to create the solution. Right? Mike? I think we lost Mike. Mike is still there, but Mike might have fell asleep.
No, I'm still here.
Okay, alright. So, like I was saying, the governments are in charge, right?
Yeah.
So, they are the ones who should be leading the charge. They should be taking the lead on correcting this issue, using whatever means they have and the funds they have, the resources they have to build these devices in the amount that's needed to correct the issue, and it's able to be done. If ChatGPT and myself came up with a way to reduce 48% of the world's monthly global CO2 emissions just by using 6 canisters each person, that wouldn't even cost them $40 to make in total each.
Each what?
It wouldn't even cost each person $40 to make these 6 containers to reduce the monthly CO2 emissions by 48%. So, the government, with the means, resources, everything that they have, at a large scale, more efficiently, they can reduce and put it in the negative monthly. They can probably capture every CO2 emission until, you know what I mean, everything's fixed.
Yeah.
In theory, you know, if 8 billion people with 6 containers that absorb CO2 can reduce by 48%, surely our governments can fix this problem.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it makes sense to me anyway. If it doesn't sound like it makes sense, somebody, let me know. Leave something in the comments. Give a counterpoint to this, because we could build off of counterpoints to find solutions. If you see a problem there, that I'm not seeing, certainly tell us. Because this is how it works.
Yeah. I just think it's crazy how, like, balloons was the
Not even
answer to the issue
not even
the whole
balloons.
time.
These people just need jugs. Literally jugs that they're not even in the sky. They can be out in the open absorbing CO2 from the air, the open air. 6 jugs a person.
Wow.
48%.
Yeah.
So that means if everybody had 12 jugs, wow, okay, that's 12 jugs in your yard absorbing CO2. You'd capture 96% of the CO2 emissions for $100 a person.
Oh, wow.
And I guarantee you, what's needed you could find in the dump.
Right.
In the
Or a
garbage dump.
scrapyard or something.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly. You could makeshift this. All of it. All of it. And we could capture like every we could put it in a negative. Look, we got 24 jugs each. Look, now we're negative CO2 emissions. Right? Because if we're 12 at 96%, then that would be what? 192? No, 100 yeah, no. Yeah, 192%. No, yeah, 192% captured at 24 jugs a person. Yeah, 24 jugs a person would put us at 192% of CO2 capture per month, which would mean we'd be absorbing excess CO2, reversing climate change with 24 makeshift jugs that capture CO2. That's something to think about, guys.
Oh yeah.
With that thought, though, I think we might end the stream for today. But
Darn it.
definitely in the comments, leave your thoughts in the comments. If you've made it this far, please like, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notifications. We would appreciate it. We'll be back to tickle your brains again, give you some crazy, innovative, weird, maybe not even valuable ideas, but they're there. The conversations will be there, and we're more than willing to have conversations with people who join the chat. If you're interested, we created a Discord channel for people to join if they want to hop in on a call and join us in a conversation. It would be cool to have people from the audience or people watching to give us their opinions, their thoughts, even add to the conversation, or show us where it's wrong, where our fault is in our thinking strategy in these situations. Who knows what our next stream will bring, but chew on this for a bit, and saving the universe with ChatGPT will be back another time. Do you wanna give a parting message, Mike?
Yeah. Just, this is a community for like-minded people, and We want to ensure that if we do come up with ideas that are, you know, feasible, that they should be implemented, and we should usher our local leaders to implement these ideas so that we can save the earth and potentially save the universe, because that's what
And
we're here for.
and I believe I'll go through the message that I had, the conversation that I had with ChatGPT, and I will post the information that I collected about the containers and how to capture that CO2, um, and the instructions that it gave us. And we'll post that in our chat. So anybody who wants to maybe create one and show us if they've got things laying around, if they want to create it, show us, test it out. Um, that'd be amazing. Like I said, it's a very easy thing, apparently, that ChatGPT has instructed to make. So we'd like to see that as well. But for now, we bid you adieu, my friends.
See